This past week, we had a hockey game that saw over 10 million people tune in to watch. Celebrities, including the leaders of both Canada and the United States, were trash talking on social media. Meanwhile, a simultaneous event was going on, the NBA All-Star Showcase, but there, fans were just begging for it to end. The NHL's Four Nations Face-Off has been the talk of North American sports for the past week. It was a perfect event from the NHL, and it was a punch to the stomach of the NBA as they were embarrassed on an international stage. How? Well, let's break it down. The Four Nations tournament gave NHL players the opportunity to do something that they've been wishing to do for almost a decade now. And that, of course, is to play best-on-best hockey. Now, like the NBA, this time of the NHL regular season is usually filled with an All-Star weekend itself. And also like the NBA, it leaves almost everyone disappointed. But this year, the NHL tried something different, and as we now know, it was an absolute home run. This really shouldn't come as any sort of surprise. After all, this event allowed players to represent their countries. The biggest issue with All-Star games is the lack of effort. But when you include national pride as well as the inevitable politics, you get a result that is absolutely electrifying. Some people questioned what kind of effort levels we would get in these tournaments simply because it wasn't the Olympics. It was the inaugural Four Nations Face-Off, but that didn't matter one bit. The physicality, the pure hatred between these teams, it was like Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals was being played out there. And don't just take it from me, take it from the players. Austin Matthews, Matthew Tkachuk, and a bunch of others commented about this themselves. On top of what was already an incredible show, we got a perfect moment to end the tournament. The storyline around Team Canada going into this tournament was Crosby passing the torch to McDavid as the leader of Canadian hockey. As I'm sure every Canadian hockey fan knows, Sidney Crosby had his magical moment in 2010 against the Americans. But this time around, Connor McDavid scored the golden goal to defeat the Americans and bring the championship to Canada, making this whole passing the torch idea come full circle. And while all this incredible hockey was being played and these incredible moments were being made, the NBA fans were being treated to Victor Wembanyama intentionally throwing the ball away, while LiAngelo Ball fired up the crowd with Tweaker. It's hard to say exactly where the NBA went wrong here, but to say the NHL had absolutely embarrassed them over the weekend would be a massive understatement. I mean, just check out some of these highlights from the game. The NBA players couldn't have cared less about the All-Star game, and that extended to the fans as well. People from top to bottom just didn't really give a shit because of one key reason. There's no stakes involved. The NHL dangled national pride in front of its players, but the NBA, well, there was really no reason for any of their players to care. Now, in terms of viewership, these games were some of the highest viewed among NHL fans ever. In fact, Game 1 between the US and Canada attracted 10.1 million viewers in North America alone. That's a crazy number for hockey fans. The last best-on-best tournament was during the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, and this round-robin game had shattered their ratings by 203%. It's one of the highest viewed hockey games we have ever seen. This was the case across social media as well. Fans and celebrities were tweeting or posting about the game like we've never seen. Why? Because, like I mentioned before, stakes were involved. National pride was on the line for both Canadian and American fans, and it was taken to another level entirely because of the ongoing politics between Canada and the US. I'm sure by now you know about the American tariffs President Donald Trump has placed and pledges to place on Canadian goods. Well, understandably, Canadians are pretty frustrated by this. So as a result, booing of the American national anthem became a practice in Canadian games. This started during an Ottawa Senators game against the Minnesota Wild and continued all the way into this tournament. In contrast, the booing understandably frustrated American fans. No matter which side of the fence you stand on in terms of your opinion on booing, one thing is for certain. It introduced another layer of drama to the game, and drama ultimately drives attention. So when Canada and the US faced off, the Patriots were out in full swing. Social media became a battleground for bragging rights, and people who have never even thought about watching hockey were tuning in.
Jordan Bennington, you stood on your head. I'm not going to be a bad loser. Congratulations to Canada.
The players did their part for growing the game as well because the people became obsessed with what they were watching. Even President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau got involved in the frenzy, something that for a mid-season 14 tournament seemed impossible. And while the NHL was attracting new eyes like we've never seen, the NBA was doing the opposite. Fans of the sport were discussing how frustrated they were with the event as a whole for various reasons, but at the center of it all, the common theme of boredom was evident. During the first Canadian-USA game, the ratings peaked with 5.2 million viewers, which made it the most watched non-Stanley Cup Final broadcast since 2019. The moment at the start of the game that saw 3 fights in 9 seconds will be etched into the minds of everyone who watched it, and the data isn't out yet for the finals, but I would be fairly confident in predicting that they exceeded even these numbers. But the NBA predictably saw a decline in their viewers for the All-Star game. They had 4.7 million viewers, under half of the NHL's Four Nations game, but more notably is that this was a decline from the previous year. The NHL was moving in the right direction because they put a good product in front of their fans, but the NBA did the opposite because they showed something that put their viewers to sleep. Perhaps the biggest winner of the entire event, however, is the NHL itself. This was a marketing masterclass from the league. They did everything they could not only to get more domestic eyes on the game, but also to grow the sport internationally, specifically in European countries. Fans in Finland and Sweden also got to watch their nations play for the first time in a long time, and with the announcement of a planned 8-team World Cup tournament every 2 years, they're continuing to do what works. And it just goes without saying that having mainstream celebrities talking about the game will also bring more eyes. The NHL has found something that works, and for the NBA's sake, they may want to follow suit. The All-Star game used to be great, but they've definitely seen a significant decline in their overall entertainment. People just don't really care anymore, and they still get to see the best players in best-on-best tournaments. The only difference is they try. So while the NBA was half-assing its way through All-Star Weekend, the NHL was embarrassing them on an international level. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you left it a like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on the NBA All-Star Weekend and the Four Nations tournament as well. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.